They came down from sky to have sex. We have heard a lot about UFOs, those mysterious spaceships coming from unknown worlds to visit us, and which come and go for an unknown reason and without bothering to notify us of their presence, and perhaps for this very reason, I mean repeating the same scenario always, which does not go beyond seeing something moving and disappearing fast in the sky. Most people lost their interest in the subject, and the stories of UFOs are no longer as exciting and attractive as they were a few decades ago. They have become meaningless, as we never understood why aliens go to the trouble of traveling billions of miles through endless space to visit a small planet in our Milky Way which crowded with billions of stars and planets. They travel all this huge distance to stand among the clouds for a few moments, so a poor farmer sees them while he is grazing his cows in the field, and then they close back to their homes without a word. Personally, I am tired of these nonsense, so I rarely write about it on my website. I want to hear something new, more than just lights and mysterious objects flying fast in the sky. I wish I could wake up one day and turn on my TV and see a UFO that has landed in Trafalgar Square in London, or in Red Square in Moscow, or near the pyramids in Giza. I would like to see aliens come out of their mysterious spaceships and talk to us humans, tell us that we are not alone in this existence, take our hand, change our lives and our view of things, teach us how to rise above our grudges and hatred for each other, how to live in peace and happiness in a developed world where there is a cure for every disease. How can we stay young for centuries, spend our summer vacation on Mars, buy apartments and houses on the moon, and exchange messages via the cosmic net with friends and loved ones on distant planets and galaxies? What a dream! Just a dream that I do not think will ever come true during my miserable short life. So let's leave dreams aside and return to reality, and let me tell you today about new stories with different scenarios from the ones you used to hear when it comes to UFOs. Hot Brazilian night. It was a charming night in 1957. The sky was clear and full of stars, and the whole existence was drowned in complete silence that was disturbed only by the hum of insects, croaking of frogs, and the annoying sound of an old tractor driven by a thin young man named Antonio Villas-Boas, who used to work at night to avoid the heat of the day. It was 1:15 after midnight when Antonio raised his head and saw a red star shining so brightly in the sky. The young man stopped his tractor and watched that star with interest, wondering what it could be. While he was busy with his thoughts, that star began to grow in size and shine as if it was falling to the earth at an extraordinary speed. It is only a few moments until it was standing above Antonio's head directly. It was not a star as he thought, but a metallic oval-shaped object topped by a large dome and radiating from below a bright red light. That mysterious object floated for a while in the air, then 3 metal legs came out from under it and the object began to descend vertically until it settled gently on the ground of the field. Terrified, Antonio tried to escape, but the tractor stopped working for an unknown reason, so he jumped from it and ran at full speed towards the houses near the field. But he did not go far, as he found himself surrounded by 4 creatures in uniforms somewhat similar to those worn by astronauts. They grabbed him and then carried him by force to their mysterious oval object or spacecraft. Antonio described his captors as being shorter than him, each wearing a gray suit, and on the chest of each suit there was a circle shining a red light. They wore tall boots with high heels, and they wore huge helmets that covered the entire head, so that only pale blue eyes appeared from them. From each helmet, 3 tubes branched downward to connect to the suit in 3 different places. In the spacecraft, Antonio found himself in a room without windows and furniture, its walls radiating a bright light as if it were daylight. Then, his captors took him to a second room that resembled the first in all its details, except for a round table in the middle surrounded by several chairs without armrests, such as those found in bar. In this room, Antonio heard his captors talking to each other for the first time, and he was very surprised by the way they spoke, as their language was like barking. After they had talked, or rather barked, a little, the captor stripped Antonio of his clothes, sprinkled him with a strange gel-like substance, and took him to a third room with vague marks on its door. In that room, They took a sample of his blood using a device that they inserted into his chin without him feeling any pain. Then they went out and left him alone. Antonio turned around. The room was completely empty, except for a large bed floating in the air without supports and no pillows or covers. Antonio sat on that bed and soon became absorbed in his thoughts and obsessions, wondering with himself what fate awaited him at the hands of these strangers. Not long after, he suddenly felt a tightness in his chest, then saw white smoke seeping through tiny pores in the walls. He felt sick and vomited in the corner of the room. Then that smoke quickly dissipated, and the door opened again, and a female alien entered. To his astonishment, she looked like women, and was completely naked. Her skin was pure white, her eyes were wide blue, her mouth was small with thin lips, her nose was delicate and straight, and her hair was blonde to whitish. As for her stature, she was as short as the other captors, but the most beautiful thing about her was her body, as she had a wonderful body. She was plump without extravagance, with a delicate waist, a thin neck. In fact, she was as charming as cinema beauties. Nothing distinguished her from human women except for a small tapering chin and red hair under the armpit and on the pubic area. The female alien entered the room staring with a look that Antonio did not lose sight of its meaning. A look he had always seen in the eyes of the women he had slept with, and he quickly realized what she wanted, and his fear left him completely after she stood in front of him and brought her naked body close to him. He found in himself an irresistible attraction to that cosmic beauty. He grabbed her hand and gently pulled her to the bed. Unexpectedly, he found her an expert in the arts of sex, making voices of pleasure and ecstasy. At the same time, he found in himself a strange strength to continue, so he had sex with her again and again, tirelessly, and if one of those aliens in uniforms hadn't entered the room after an hour, maybe he would never have stopped. With the entry of the other alien, she got off the bed and was about to go out with her fellow when she turned towards Antonio with a semi-smile on her face, then wiped her stomach with her hand, and pointed to him, then nodded towards the sky. Antonio realized that she was telling him that she would take his child to live with her on her planet. He understood that the purpose of the entire process of kidnapping him was to have sex with that alien. Perhaps the aliens wanted to improve their offspring, so they chose a human stallion for this purpose. Antonio felt great satisfaction in reaching this conclusion, feeling a bit of pride and vanity for being that desired stallion. Antonio was alone for some time after the aliens left. Then two aliens entered, returned his clothes to him and escorted him again to that room with table and chairs, where four of them were sitting, barking in their vague language as if they were in a meeting. It seemed clear that they had lost their interest in Antonio, so he took advantage of their preoccupation and began to looking around him. His eyes fell on a small cube that looked like a clock at the end of the room, so he thought with himself to take it with him to be proof of the sincerity of his kidnapping, but as soon as he caught that cube until one of the aliens rose and took it gently from him and then put it back to its place. The aliens took Antonio on a tour inside their spacecraft, and after the tour ended, one of them escorted him out and left him in the same spot from which they took him for the first time. Then the alien returned to the spacecraft, which quickly began to rise vertically in the air until it reached a certain height. Then flashing colored lights appeared from the bottom of it and it set off like lightning to disappear in the sky in the blink of an eye. Antonio stood alone, stunned, near his tractor. He looked at his watch and found that it was 5 in the morning, meaning that he had spent about 4 hours inside the spacecraft. Then he got on his tractor and went back to his house. At first, no one believed Antonio's story. His friends mocked him, thinking that he was delusional. But weeks after, Antonio began to show strange symptoms: headaches, nausea, convulsions, blisters on the skin, and the doctors were confused in diagnosing his condition. But when he told them his story with the aliens, some of them suspected that this was the reason behind his illness. Perhaps he was exposed to high doses of radiation. It is said that a committee made up of intelligence officers, doctors and nuclear scientists investigated Antonio's story and actually found a high level of radiation in the spot where the spacecraft allegedly landed. Thus, Antonio's story turned into an exciting news that was reported by Brazilian newspapers. People were divided about him, some believed him, and others saw nothing in his story but illusions and hallucinations. Out of controversy about his story, those who knew Antonio closely said he was an honest and respectful person. He graduated from university later in his life and worked as a lawyer, and died at an early age in 1991, leaving behind a wife and 4 children.